Hello and welcome to episode 74 of Driver Seat Plug Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. July is coming up, and as a direct result, my annual vacation and sabbatical will take place as scheduled this year, as always. Last year I did a half-assed game show format that I was focusing on too many things at one time. I just needed some quick content. So this year I'm going to do some story time videos. Two of them are going to come directly from my other YouTube channel, DGF2099 Productions, and two of them are going to be original for this channel, and I'm going to have fun with them, so stay tuned. Now we move on to some news. So I hadn't talked about this because I was sort of waiting to see how things were going to play out, but our first story discusses the wheel that came off of Kyle Kirkwood's car during his very scary wreck at the Indy 500. As a direct result of this, a fan was injured by some of the debris, and a Chevy was damaged by the wheel itself. Well, IndyCar came out and said something that's it's amazing to me how anybody could think this way. They have tethers that are supposed to keep the wheel attached to the car, but apparently the tether in question, quote unquote, didn't fail. It didn't fail, according to IndyCar. I cannot believe that I have to say this. But if something doesn't do the singular job it is there specifically to do, that is the very definition of a failure. There's a reason these tethers exist. Fans have been injured and killed at flying debris at races for years, and something like this happening in 2023 is totally inexcusable. I mean, IndyCar and Andretti Autosport have a lot of questions they need to answer very soon, and I don't know how this could have happened. Now, thank God that nobody was critically injured or killed, but the only real true damage was to a random Chevy in the parking lot. If that wheel had gone into the grandstands, given how packed the Indy 500 is, there would have been a lot of injuries and a lot of fatalities. There needs to be safety and accountability. As far as I'm concerned, if in fact the tether didn't fail, the only other viable options was that A, it wasn't attached to begin with, or B, it wasn't there at all. Nobody, and I mean nobody, be it drivers, pit crew members, track official, track crews, TV crews, or spectators should ever be injured during a race period. I understand that it's going to happen, but everything needs to be done to protect the individuals at a race. You want people to leave in the same condition they came there in, and there's no excuse for this. And while I'm on the subject of IndyCar, I'd like somebody to answer me this question. Why is there a race being held the week after the Indy 500? I mean, the fans are enjoying the race at Detroit, which is understandable because it's a good race, but wouldn't it make more sense to give the team a little bit of breathing room between the biggest race of the season and the next race? It isn't a racing series that races almost every week like NASCAR. Formula One is also guilty of this, with the Spanish Grand Prix taking place after the Monaco Grand Prix. But, you want your teams and your drivers and your equipment at the best. So, give them a week off, let the pressure of the biggest race of the season lessen so the teams can be in top form for the next race. You want them at your best, so make it happen. Now we're going to move on to NASCAR. Last week in my discussion on the rebirth of North Wilkesboro, I sort of casually mentioned that Rockingham Speedway was also given money by the state of North Carolina. Well, according to an article on WFMY's official website, link in the description, this isn't a remote possibility. The Speedway owners are determined for NASCAR to come back to the Rock and are planning on being race ready for 2024. Unlike North Wilkesboro, Rockingham has had more events since the Cup Series left, including a number of Truck Series events. Now, obviously, the owners of the Speedway are confident that NASCAR will come back, but there are obviously a lot of hurdles and issues that need to be cleared before this can happen. Now, I like the idea of a track like Rockingham returning to NASCAR, and I like the idea even more of getting rid of Texas to facilitate this. I'm sorry, Texas has done little to help the image of NASCAR. I'm sorry, but it's not a great track. I would even say get rid of the Chicago street race, because from what I've seen and what I've heard, it's not going to work, because stuff that needs to be taken care of isn't being taken care of and the clock is ticking, but I'll get to that next week. Then we're going to go to Formula One. Because I heard about this on Formula One's own website. And I actually like this idea, and I'm really looking forward to see how this plays out. So I talked about the Disney NHL game that took place a few months ago, where it was a Disney cartoon. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it was the live coverage of the game, but with cartoon characters, CGI cartoon characters instead of regular players. It was specifically designed for kids to give them a safe introduction to hockey. Well, Formula One is doing the same thing, and I'm going to quote the exact words from the Formula One article, link in the description. According to Formula One, quote, Formula One and Sky Group will co-produce the first ever F1 broadcast for children at this year's Formula One Qatar Airways Hungarian Grand Prix in 2023. Formula One will create a dedicated international feed including bespoke graphics, sound effects, and special features, including 3D augmented graphics on specific camera angles. This will enhance the broadcast for younger audiences in the UK and Germany. In the UK, presenters of the Sky Kids show FYI, Braden and Scarlett, as well as young go-karter Zach, will join Formula One world champion Nico Rosberg and former NASCAR and IndyCar racer Danica Patrick to present F1 Juniors. Over the course of the race week, the young recruits will try their hand at various broadcasting roles, including interviews with their favorite drivers and other big names from the paddock, co-hosting with Natalie Pinkham of the Sky Sports F1 team, and commenting live during a race. Now, the two real-life commentators, you had me at Nico Rosberg and you lost me at Danica Patrick. I'm sorry, I am not sold on Danica Patrick as an announcer. I'm just not. If you wanted to get Jamie Little, who is 1,000 times better as a broadcaster than Danica Patrick could ever hope to be. She's a professional broadcaster first. She's great at her job. She's the best at what she does, and she would be 1,000 times better in that role. And I'm looking forward to seeing footage of this in action, because unlike the NHL, this is probably going to be easier on a technical level, since Formula One and broadcasters have all the information to the in-car info they need to make this happen. And this information isn't as easily accessible in the NHL. And I like the idea of introducing kids to sports like this in general, because again, it's a fledgling fan base in certain areas. The NHL's numbers aren't what they used to be, and racing's numbers aren't what they used to be. I do question the logic of not doing something in the US, which is again a market that you spent decades trying to conquer, but you haven't conquered yet. Why wouldn't you do something like this? Because again, it's not like ESPN. It's not like ESPN is sending their own stuff. They have a deal with Sky Sports. So Sky Sports could easily do something like this on one of ESPN's many other channels. I'll be interested to see how this plays out, and I'm probably not going to get to see the whole broadcast, but I'll be interested to look at snippets to see how they do this. I mean, it can't be any worse than Nickelodeon's NFL coverage, which was just horrifying to say the least. Oh, and with that, I'm going to take my first break, and I'm going to talk about some issues I've been dealing with on news sites as of late. I'll be right back. Welcome back. As most people do, I follow the news. And in the age of the internet, there are many news sites, but I choose two sites for news access, which are both very trustworthy. For national and international news, I use CNN, and for local news, I use ABC7 Chicago. Both are good in this respect, but both do have problems. Is there a law somewhere that states that quote unquote news stories, which are clearly paid promotion, to be labeled as such? I mean, I know that there's a rule on YouTube, but shouldn't it be labeled on news sites? I say this because ABC7, which again is a great resource for Chicago area news, does this on a near daily basis. But the story that really got me to think about this was a story about an arcade called 2-Bit Circus in Los Angeles. Written by Jose Mayorquin. This is the text of the article in its entirety, link in the description, and I'm not exaggerating on this. Los Angeles, California. 2-Bit Circus isn't your typical circus experience. This interactive entertainment venue is the future of arcades. Quote, my co-founder Brent and I started this place many years ago after realizing that entertainment hadn't evolved, said Eric Gradman, self-declared mad investor of 2-Bit Circus. So this is just a natural evolution. We're taking it up to another level. The success of the unique Arts District entertainment venue near downtown Los Angeles led to the recent opening of a 2-Bit Circus in Dallas, Texas. The venue also offers a creative menu and a full bar for guests to enjoy. More information at 2bitcircus.com. Now, dear listeners, I ask you this. Does that sound like a news report or a press release written by 2-Bit Circus? And also, why is a Chicago-based news outlet posting a story like this? It's not even well written. That's the thing that really annoys me. It's not even a well-written article or a well-written press release. If you were 2-Bit Circus and you were issuing a press release trying to bring attention to your product and bring people in, wouldn't you talk more about the unique experiences? Wouldn't you wouldn't you say more about why you should go, what the menus are, what the entertainment options? What exactly makes this interactive entertainment venue, quote unquote, the future of arcades? What makes it a circus? What are some of the unique attractions? What reason do I have to care, and why would I want to go to this place? I like arcades, but you're gonna have to tell me some of the stuff that you have. You just, after reading that article, it's just like, okay, so it's just an arcade. I don't know what else is, what it brings to the table in terms of arcades. Now, this was bad in and of itself, but the news stuff on CNN is worse. CNN really needs somebody on their website to decide what constitutes news and what constitutes fluff. Now, you go to their website, the top half of the website is mostly important news, with the occasional op-ed or random piece. But when you scroll down to the bottom half of the website, you find yourself in Fluffland. Actually, I take that back. Fluffland actually sounds like it would be a fun place to visit. This is just not good. Again, I try to ignore these kinds of things, I really do. But there was one link, which is, again, on the front page of CNN. It drew my attention because of just how amazing this is to be on a front page of any news website. It's on the front. One of the most well-known and respected news outlets in America has a link to a fluff piece called "What Are Steel Cutouts?" Link in the description. Now, the article, written by Layla Khoury-Hanold for, quote, Food Network Kitchen, it goes into the intricate detail of what steel cut oats are, its description, uses, and recipes. It's obviously a paid article. But I will give credit where credit's due. Because unlike the 2-Bit Circus article, it's actually very well written, does a great job of making its point. And I'd be lying if I said that I didn't know what steel cut oats were prior to this, and now I'm smarter because of it. And it was interesting to read too. But why was this on the front page? You have actual news stories that are much more important and higher up on the priority food chain than what are steel cutouts. They're not on the front page. You have to go to the various subsections to find them. I mean, we have war, we have inflation, we have strife, we have protest, coup d'etats, various kinds of things that justify places on the front page of CNN, and this fluff piece is on it. And I wouldn't mind if they had a separate page for stuff like this, but there is no reason whatsoever that this warrants a place on the front page. I'm here at CNN for legitimate, real news, not for fluff pieces. As much as I like CNN, I do have my problems with it, but this is just so pointless. Again, how difficult is it to have a separate page on your website for stories that aren't pressing? I want real news. I don't care about oats. I don't care about new items found in the Titanic wreck. What kinds of makeup are best? I just want the flippin' news. I don't think I'm asking too much here. Give me news, not fluff. And with that, I'm going to take my second break, and I'll discuss why I don't read fiction anymore. So I'm back for my final segment. Like a lot of people do, I read for fun. I like to read historical books, books about the history of racing, SFI technical books, and a lot of other non-fictional pieces. I've been done with fiction for some time now. Many people are too. And I'm bringing this up because an English teacher friend of mine posted on Facebook that she was dismayed that kids aren't reading fictional books after graduating from school anymore, and they're sad about that. Well, I'm going to tell you why I'm done with fictional books, because English teachers are the reason. I was into it when I was younger, but with English teachers and the whole author's meaning thing is why I stopped. The whole author's meaning thing with fictional books has turned me off of fictional books forever. When in school in the US, I don't know how it works internationally, we are taught in English classes that there's always deeper meaning to the books we read, and that we should look through the details and analyze themes. And I get what they're trying to do, but all it did for a lot of us is suck any fun or enjoyment out of reading fiction for most of us. I am reasonable to a degree, but I am just so tired of being expected to read something looking for cues or symbolism, everything. We've all heard the curtains are blue allegory, which means that a teacher is talking to a class and is discussing a book. The book mentions that the curtains in the character's house were blue, and according to the teacher, the curtains were blue because to represent sadness, but the author just said the curtains are blue because it's a random innocuous detail. It's become such a problem in recent years. People are attaching symbolism or meaning that simply isn't there to fiction, and I've heard from fiction authors who don't like this. I mean, after middle school, every English teacher that would have us read fiction, we would always have to discuss what the author meant by what they wrote. Now, for some, this means discussing the generally accepted meaning. For example, discussing the fact that Animal Farm was an allegory for the Russian Revolution. And discussing it like that, fine, I can handle that. But for others, especially those who are more full of themselves. This means looking at every possible innocuous detail, looking at these details and connecting dots, and trying to come up with a deeper meaning based on those dots. Now also, before I continue, I would like to say that as a point of pride, I actually managed to spell innocuous correctly the first time I wrote my notes on this, so I'm proud of that. The problem with the approach of the connecting the dots is that a lot of times these dots just don't exist. They don't. Almost every written fictional book has a lot of innocuous details. The problem with some of these English teachers is that they just assume that many of these details are part of a deeper meaning or have more messages. The curtains are blue allegory thing is a perfect example. Because it really is just an innocuous detail that has been given needless meaning. Oh, this character wears a red tie to symbolize his pent-up and repressed rage. Or maybe he just wears a red tie because he likes it. Maybe he wears a red tie because it's the dress code at the place he works. You don't know. And you know what? After years and years of being forced to search through deeper meaning and symbolism through reading lines of text featuring a lot of innocuous shit and random meaningless details, I just got so fed up with the whole thing that the first chance I got, I stopped reading fiction, and my life is better as a result. I hate deeper meaning. I'm just gonna say it. I hate deeper meaning. If I can't enjoy something for what it is and I have to look deeper for the symbolism of what the creator quote unquote really means, I have better things to do with my time. When it comes to some of these English teachers, as far as I'm concerned, unless you've had lunch with the author of the book and they have told you what the meaning really is, I'm not taking you seriously. And I have a very, very hard time that you've somehow managed to get lunch with a New York Times best-selling author and they've told you and you alone what the real deeper meaning of the book is. This is why, by the way, I also enjoy watching sports and I enjoy watching professional wrestling. You don't need to understand the subtext to understand what's going on. Oh, Gunther and Mustafa Ali are fighting for the Intercontinental Championship? No subtext. Gunther has the title. Mustafa Ali wants the title. Why are two teams of 5 men focused so much on throwing a ball through a hoop? What's the deeper meaning there? No, it isn't. It's the NBA Finals. One team is going to win the championship. The other team wants to win the championship. I mean, you don't really need to think that deeply on this. And the fact of the matter is, I'm going to piss off a few English teachers with this. I really don't care. I don't care. You're part of the problem. So, since some of these teachers have their heads so far up their own asses trying to sniff their own farts they can't see the forest for the trees, let me give you some advice. If you ever want a perfect way to see how your students and frankly some fiction authors see you, go find an episode of South Park entitled The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs. It's the second episode from season 14 released in 2010. The primary plot of this episode is that the boys are forced to read Catcher in the Rye, which is controversial. But the book isn't as controversial as they thought it was going to be, so they write The Tale of Scrody McBoogerballs, which is literally nothing more than vulgarity for the sake of vulgarity. The book becomes a massive hit, with people only being able to read a certain part into it without getting sick to their stomachs. But people start overanalyzing it and adding meaning and deeper thought and subtext that the 4 kids who wrote the book in the first place literally are screaming that there is no deeper meaning. And like most South Park episodes, the search for the deeper meaning and everything goes completely off the rails and out of control. With the entire time, the 4 kids who wrote the book are literally saying, this is not what we meant. Does it sound familiar to you? Because it should. This is how you sound to your students. You honestly see yourself as a beacon of knowledge. in a sea of dark stupidity. In actuality, you're forcing your students are being forced to spend their day in a soulless government building, and you're forcing your students to go through a 250-page book looking for meaning in the most random of innocuous details, and then you wonder why your students stop reading for fun. And here's another piece of advice for the English teachers out there. If you really want to shove your version of what the author meant down your students' throats for a year, regardless of how accurate they are or not, then you can't be shocked when even the most devoted of students is done buying your shit at the end of the year. After a while, even the student who loves to read more than anything will just start rolling their eyes at you. You seem to forget that this is a generation of kids that have been advertised to their whole lives. And as such, they've developed a much better sense than you realize when they're being fed bullshit. You also need to understand that most of your students would rather be anywhere else during a school day, let alone being forced to analyze fiction for the author's meaning. You've given them all the reason that they'll ever need to not read for fun, and then you wonder why they stop reading for fun. Way to go, guys. Golf clap. And the sad part is, and this is a real sad reality of schools, there are a lot of necessary things that aren't being taught in schools. I include budgeting, taxes, applying for jobs, creating resumes, and other very necessary things that we all have to deal with are just not taught in schools. I mean, do we really need 4 years of English classes and literature classes telling us to analyze details? Or do we need classes about budgeting? Do we need classes about taxes, applying for jobs, creating resumes? I mean, which is more necessary here? The fact is, most school curriculums place overanalyzing fictional books for deeper meaning as a constant, but at the same time, once school's over, so long, good luck. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. And with that, it's finally out of my system. I will conclude this episode, and next week, the Diamond Jubilee episode number 75. I'm Dave Farsley. Leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week for episode 75 of Driver Suit Blog Radio.